Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. We're cutting through all the GRC noise today, bringing you the insights that really matter from governance, risk, and compliance. This week it's our special GRC Roundup. We're pulling together the top news, looking at the implications, trying to keep you informed without, information overload. You send us a whole stack of sources, and yeah, we're ready to unpack some really fascinating developments.
That's right. And what's always fascinating is just how interconnected it all is, isn't it? You look at, say, new regulations shaping online stuff, then major cyber incidents, the ongoing fight against financial crime. It's just so clear that GRC vigilance, well, it isn't just best practice anymore. It's absolutely necessary. So yeah, we'll touch on a variety of updates, give you that high-level view and what it means for the bigger picture. So what stands out to you first as we dive in?
Okay, well, let's start with governance. There are some pretty significant shifts happening there, kind of redefining things. First up, the FDA. They've actually eliminated 52 food standards. For decades, what made something real food, like macaroni shapes, or how much fruit was actually in jam that was set by federal criteria? Now, the FDA is saying these are obsolete and unnecessary. They argue it stifles innovation, and modern labeling is enough. That's quite a change.
It absolutely is. And what's interesting there, I think, is the underlying shift. Sure, the aim is innovation, streamlining for manufacturers, but it really changes what consumer protection means. It's less about the FDA setting a baseline quality and more about putting the onus on consumers to read labels very carefully. It's shifting responsibility, really.
That's a really good point, a shift in responsibility. Okay, so from food to education, there's a new expulsion law in Ohio that caught my eye. Students expelled under this law, they now face an assessment by a psychiatrist or psychologist at the end of their expulsion. And if they're not deemed, rehabilitated or no longer a danger, the expulsion can be extended indefinitely in 90-day chunks.
Yeah, there's a very specific piece of legislation and potentially with very long-term consequences for the students involved. The goal is safety, obviously, but that indefinite extension part.
Well, it raises some big ethical questions, doesn't it? Practical ones, too, especially around due process. And you still have the whole overlay of protections for students with disabilities under separate state and federal laws, which complicates things further, right? And talking about protecting vulnerable groups, especially kids, the online world is a huge focus now. The European Data Protection Board, the EDPB, they just weighed in on draft guidelines for protecting minors online under the Digital Services Act, the DSA. That's the EU's big new law for online platform safety. They welcomed the guidelines, but they specifically called out concerns about AI chatbots, AI deepfakes, even online gambling, things that create new risks for kids.
Yeah, and connecting that to the bigger picture, it just highlights this major global push for child safety online. The EDPB is stressing, consistency between the DSA and GDPR, the main data privacy law. Cooperation between regulators is key. It's such a complex area, especially with AI getting baked into everything. Things like age verification, designing services for kids. It's becoming more critical and honestly more challenging than ever. How do platforms even operationalize that effectively?
Exactly. Building services that are private by design for minors, especially with AI swirling around, that means rethinking everything. Data collection, algorithms, it needs proactive design, not just, reacting after the fact. And speaking of ethical standards, what happens when the firms that are supposed to uphold those standards, well, fall short themselves? Which brings us to Deloitte, PwC, and EY. Big names, right? Collectively fined $8.5 million because their employees cheated on internal training exams, ethics tests even.
Oof. Yeah, that goes deeper than just a few individuals, doesn't it? When the pros who ensure compliance for others are caught cutting corners on their own ethics training, it signals a potential issue with internal culture, maybe accountability. It definitely raises questions about the core integrity at these firms, what that means for client trust. Absolutely. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. From governance to risk, and this is where things get really interesting, especially cybersecurity. The healthcare sector has been absolutely hammered. Look at the Change Healthcare cyber attack. That was the Black Cattle PHV group. Caused massive disruption. Optum, part of United Health Group, even had to set up a temporary funding program just to help affected providers with cash flow.
That wasn't just another attack. It was. It really exposed a critical vulnerability in healthcare's infrastructure, like a single point of failure. It shows how one attack on a vendor can just paralyze a whole sector, highlights the urgent need for, well, systemic resilience, not just individual company defenses. And having robust, tested recovery plans is just essential. It's more than just getting data back.
That kind of vulnerability really makes you wonder how anyone keeps up. So on that note, NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, released a major update to its cybersecurity framework, CSF 2.0, First big update in a decade. And the key thing, it now applies beyond critical infrastructure to all organizations. Size, maturity, doesn't matter.
And that update is crucial. It reflects that cyber risk today is, well, universal. It means everyone, small businesses included, now has this updated, comprehensive framework. It's an acknowledgement that good cybersecurity isn't just an IT issue. It's fundamental to business. It's governance. It's risk management for everyone.
Right. And speaking of broader risks tied to data, President Biden signed an executive order. It's aimed at stopping large-scale transfers of sensitive American personal data to countries of concern. Think China, Russia, Iran. We're talking genomic, biometric, health, location, financial data. And it's primarily targeting data brokers.
Yeah, that's clearly a national security move. It recognizes that data, especially aggregated sensitive data, can pose real strategic risks. It forces everyone to reevaluate how data flows internationally. It really brings home the geopolitical side of data privacy. People often underestimate how much data brokers gather, how bits and pieces can build a detailed picture. So this order is a big step.
Yeah, enforcing it must be complex, though. And then, of course, there's AI, looming over everything. Experts keep calling it a double-edged sword. Great for defenders spotting threats, sure, but attackers are using it too, crafting way more convincing phishing emails, exploiting weaknesses faster. Mid-sized companies seem particularly vulnerable, valuable targets, but often short on cybersecurity resources.
Which raises the big question, right? How do organizations keep pace, especially those mid-sized ones? The implication seems to be that relying on external on-demand expertise is becoming less of a luxury and more like a basic necessity. For everything from AI governance help to pen testing to incident response, AI moves so fast the threats evolve quicker than many internal teams can really handle alone.
Okay, shifting now into compliance. Always changing, always keeping people on their toes. We saw a truly massive penalty for TD Bank, fined $3 billion. Historic settlement for Bank Secrecy Act and money laundering violations.
Wow. $3 billion. That sends an unequivocal message from regulators, doesn't it? Failures in anti-money laundering controls, which the BSA requires, will have incredibly severe consequences. It just hammers home the need for robust internal systems, vigilant monitoring, and a strong compliance culture. That's not a slap on the wrist, that's a statement.
Yeah, definitely a statement. And sticking with international finance, on the sanctions front, the EU made new designations targeting Iran over missile transfers. Meanwhile, FATF, the global money laundering watchdog, is getting attention with updates to its gray list. Jurisdictions like the BVI, UAE, Monaco, either being added or maybe coming off.
And what's fascinating there is just the constant motion in sanctions and the real-world impact of those lists. Being gray-listed by FATF, it hits a country's reputation hard, but practically it complicates due diligence for businesses everywhere. It can mean higher costs, more scrutiny, maybe limited access to finance. It shows that global push to fight illicit money is intensifying. It's a powerful lever.
And speaking of compliance struggles, the legal sector itself is under the microscope. We've seen several law firms, even big ones like Herbert Smith Freehills and Dentons, get hit with fines for AML failures. Some even tied to Russian sanctions breaches.
Which makes you ask, why? Why are law firms who advise on compliance having trouble with their own compliance? It suggests even the experts can slip up. It just underlines the need for constant vigilance, strong internal controls, ongoing training, especially with rules changing so fast due to geopolitics. Kind of a humbling reminder for everyone, really.
It really is. Now, a different kind of compliance area, but just as important, maybe more personal. A recent analysis found nearly half of popular period tracking apps share user data for advertising.
Get this. Yeah, that's critical because it highlights just how hard it is to protect sensitive health information. These apps collect incredibly intimate data by their nature. And even data that seems harmless can be used to infer really sensitive things about someone. Major privacy concerns. It shows data protection risks go way beyond what people might think, right into these very personal apps. Makes you ask, where's my data going?
Exactly. And finally, a big one looming for financial firms. DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act. Hearing lots of chatter that it's going to be as big an impact as GDPR was.
DORA. Yeah, the implication there is huge. It's not just cybersecurity. It's forcing financial firms to completely rethink their digital operational resilience end to end, meaning they have to ensure critical functions keep running even during major disruptions, cyber attacks, IT failures, whatever. It's a proactive move by regulators to prevent systemic risk, making sure the core financial system stays standing no matter what hits it. It's a big shift towards holistic resilience.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground today. From food standards changing, school policies, huge cyber attacks, sanctions, all the way to really personal data privacy issues with apps.
Hmm.
It's just crystal clear the whole GRC landscape is constantly shifting. New challenges, but also maybe new opportunities to be more informed, more resilient.
Absolutely. And what connects it all, I think, is this theme of increasing complexity.
Yeah.
Just operating responsibly, ethically, securely. It's getting harder in this interconnected world, whether you're talking about protecting kids online or safeguarding data or fighting financial crime. You need critical thinking. You need to be proactive. It's more vital than ever.
So what does this all mean for you, listening in? Well, it means staying curious, right? Looking beyond the headlines, asking how these rules and incidents impact your life, your business, your data. Understanding that ripples in one area spread out. We really encourage you to think about how these shifts affect your world, maybe dig deeper into the topics that hit closest to home. Maybe next time you look at a food label or download an app, you'll see those deeper GRC implications playing out. Thanks for diving deep with us today.